Dana here. Welcome to Sew Learn Create. I'm glad you joined us today. And if you haven't done so, please click that subscribe button and the bell notification. We would love to have you join our community. Also, if you want to support us in other ways, I have an Etsy shop with sewing kits for a lot of the tutorials that we have on the channel, and I have a Patreon page where you can join at multiple tiers. For today's project, we're going to be doing a series of videos on how to make an upcycled shirt. So this is one that I'm kind of using as my example. This is the back and this is the front. And this will be a 3-part series on how to gather your supplies, design your shirt, and then the final one will be how to stitch your shirt. So let's get started. For today's project, the upcycled shirt, you're going to need a lot of supplies. And so this video is all about what supplies you need and gathering them before we begin our shirt. So the first thing you're going to need is a shirt. And you can either use a denim shirt, button-up denim works well. Just make sure if you're going to use denim, it doesn't have a lot of stretch to it. Because if it has stretch, then it has to be sewn differently. And so make sure that your denim is 100% cotton or pretty close to that, and it doesn't have a lot of stretch. You can also use a flannel shirt. And flannel, again, just make sure that it's got more cotton than anything and that it doesn't have a lot of stretch to it. And on flannel shirts, they will sometimes have, like this one has a gathered section back here at the back, and that's fine. We just need to, when we design our shirt, we might need to work around that. And then the other thing is just make sure your shirt, if this is for you, it fits you or the person you're making it for. So the first thing you'll need is your shirt. Then you'll need some adhesive Fusible. And there's 2 different brands that I typically use. One of them is Heat and Bond Light. And I'll put a link in the description about where you can get that particular brand. And then the other one is Wonder Under. So it's a fusible that we'll use to fuse our fabrics and things with. And I'll put a link, and you need not a lot of that, but you probably half a yard, depending on the size of your pieces, would work. Then the other thing you're going to need is just some basic supplies. You're going to need a ruler, a pencil, and some paper. And that's to help us cut the shapes that we want to make our fabric into. The first thing you're going to want to find after you find your shirt is some kind of design that'll be your focal point of the back of your shirt. This can be several different things. It can be a printed design like I have on mine here. And here's another one that I have. And you can find these at different places, fabric stores, even online. You could use old quilt blocks if you have those, or find those at estate sales is a great place to, thrift stores is a great place. You can also use different vintage handkerchiefs or doilies. And you might not use the whole thing, but if you find one that's got a pretty lace edging that you like, or a design of tatting or something like that, then you might want to use part of that. Here's another one that's got more of a Battenberg lace look on the edge. You could also use different embroidered pieces. Actually, this one goes this way. I found this at a thrift store in a big bag of different things. And you just want it to be something that you like, that is interesting, because the back of your shirt you want is the biggest space you have, so you want something that's a large focal point. Here's another vintage doily that has some embroidery on it. And then you can also find at your local sewing supply and craft stores just all different kinds of and sizes of doilies or lace. You can even find these doilies sometimes at the Dollar Tree. So you'll need some kind of larger piece as a focal point. After you've selected your large design piece for the back, you're going to want to pick some fabrics that will coordinate with that. And I've got 2 different groupings here that I can use, and I'm going to show you kind of the examples. And on all of these things, you want to pick more than you think you'll need, because when we get to designing, we will audition or try out certain things. Some will work, some will not. So I'm going to do this group of fabric first. So if I was going to use this as my large focal point on the back, or even this piece, then I want something that's going to coordinate with that and the shirt. So I'm going to first pick a focal fabric, and the fabric that I'm calling my focal fabric will pull in all the colors that I want to use for that particular project. So I picked this as my focal fabric, and it's got red and yellow and then various shades of blue. So what I've gone through is picked out some scraps, and you don't need a ton of fabric, but you need several different pieces. And I picked out some blues. I've picked out some different reds. And I've picked out some yellows. And you can see that these all pick up different colors that are in my focal fabric. I rarely use just a solid piece of fabric. I will use that sometimes, but not in a big piece. Most of my fabrics, I want what I call a tone on tone. So it's blue on top of blue, red on top of red, maybe a little coordinating color. But I want it to be, this is my main fabric, so everything needs to coordinate with it, including my back piece. So that's one color wave that you could use. And this would work on my blue flannel shirt or even my denim shirt. And then the other one is if I was going to use this as part of my focal on the back, then I could even incorporate a small quilt block. But then this is my focal fabric. And I could even incorporate a bigger piece of this with these two items if I wanted to. Or I picked this one also. And then I picked some greens because I'm basing all my color waves on this focal fabric. Here's my greens. Here's my yellows or creams, my pinks, and my blues. And they all kind of coordinate with this focal fabric. This is a little bit brighter blue than others, but if I incorporated some of this, it would still work, and it all would work with my doily. The next thing you're going to gather is some lace or trim. And I've got a wide variety. You want different widths, like I've gathered some wide lace or lace here. You want to make sure that it's flat. If it's gathered, then it's a little harder to stitch, and it also adds a dimension to your shirt that will stick out. So if that's a look you want, that's fine, but most of the time I use some type of flat. And I have a wide one, and then I have a variety of other widths of lace. And this one is more of a polyester, and it's a little airier. Then this one is a kind of a medium width. This is a cotton crocheted lace, works well. And you don't need a lot. You don't need yards and yards of it. So thrift stores and garage sales, estate sales are great places to find little pieces of lace that people used to have in their sewing room. Here's another one that's a little medium width, and it's got a nice scallop edge on it. And you want something that's got a little bit of a flare or dimension to it. This is one that you could use, and you could stitch on as a row of the flowers, or you could even cut the flowers apart and use them individually. So these are nice things to have. You can also use just your regular type ribbon. You just want to make sure that the ribbon is washable. So you don't want anything that's like stiff floral ribbon. You want something that is out of the sewing area that you can wash. Here's another small little flower embroidered that you could use as a long piece or even cut it apart. Here's some smaller doilies. This piece was actually cut from a bigger doily that was falling apart, and I just kind of separated them. This is a piece of lace, and I've cut just 2 areas of it, so that's a nice thing to use. You can also use lace pieces, and you could use this as a whole, or we could cut it apart and just use certain aspects of it. You want to make sure that whatever lace or trim you pick coordinates with your focal fabric and your back design piece. And you want to choose a wide variety because, again, when we get ready to put this together and design it, some of these will work, with what we're looking for and some will not. So I always pull extra, then I have a lot of choices. This lace would work. It's pretty, got a crocheted edge on it, and it would work with either of my focals. You can also use rickrack. Rickrack is a fun addition, and it gives it kind of a whimsical look. And you can also just use your regular satin ribbon. Just again, make sure it is washable. The next supplies we're going to gather are what I call the embellishments, and they're used for places on your collar and to add detail to the areas that you're going to stitch your bigger pieces of fabric. And they're just the little details that make it very unique and kind of give it a little bit of flair. So you can use a lot of different things. You can use lace trim like I talked about a minute ago. We can just use and cut off one or two of these flowers and use those as an embellishment. Those are always good. Smaller lace or doily pieces work well as an embellishment. Here's a little embroidered flower that I found, and it was in a pack, and you can find these at your craft store. And it would work as a nice embellishment for either one of my color waves that I picked. You just want to make sure that your embellishments coordinate with your back design piece and your focal fabric. So another thing you can use are yo-yos, and they add a dimension, and they look really cute when you add a button in the center and then some lace or something behind them. So yo-yos are good. And you can a lot of times find yo-yos at your thrift store or estate sales where people have made them, put them in a bag, and then they sell them that way. And then you want a variety of buttons. The only thing you want to make sure is that your button is a flat button. If you use a shank button, which raises it up off your shirt, then that you want to strategically place that so that when you are sitting in a chair, it's not in the center of your back, because it will tend to, if it's a shank, it'll tend to be uncomfortable. And you want your flat buttons in a variety of shapes and designs. Like here in my pink, I have kind of an oval one. Most of mine are round, but here I have a flower and some square buttons. And your button shapes and designs, if they have kind of an ornate aspect to them, just add a little bit of flair. And then I always like for some of my buttons to have a little bit of a sheen or a shine to them. And that is another layer of design that just makes it a little more interesting than if they're all just your regular flat button. Then the last thing you're going to gather is a variety of threads. And again, you want your thread to match your design or your color wave, because you can add a layer of design by what you stitch around your fabrics. So for this color wave, I've picked kind of this grouping, and my blues would work on either one. My pinks and greens would work with this, and I could even bring in this yellow if I wanted to on this one. And then you'll need some thread that would match your lace or your doily if you didn't want that stitching to show. So that's the last thing you're going to gather for your upcycled shirt. So gather your supplies and join us in the next one. I hope you'll gather your shirt and your other supplies so we can create our upcycled shirt in the next video where we design it. So see you soon.